Captain Vex Nielsen slouched in the command chair, a patchwork of duct tape and wishful thinking holding it together, much like her crew's sanity. Outside the viewport, Earth was a blue marble, a reminder of home and the chaos they left behind. "Never thought I'd miss that spinning trash heap," Vex muttered. Her second-in-command, Torv, a grizzled veteran with a face like a bulldog that had been run over by Optimism's steamroller, let out a snort. "You know you love it, Cap. Nothing like good all pollution and political unrest to warm the cockles of your heart." "Yeah, warms 'em right up," Vex replied dryly, adjusting her jacket, which might have been military issue a decade ago, now more derelict chic. "What have we got on the scanners, Torv? Anything that isn't us or the usual space junk." Torv tapped a few buttons, a look of concentration veiling his usual disdain for all things electronic. "There's something big out there, drifting near orbit." Vex leaned forward, her interest piqued. "Big like my regrets or big like a planet killer? Somewhere between your last ex and a midlife crisis," Torv quipped, squinting at the data. "Massive, though, alien design by the looks of it." Vex's eyes sparkled with mischief. "Alien, you say? Time for a little first contact, or should we skip to the part where we loot their corpses?" Torv shrugged, unfazed by her trademark gallows humor. "Depends if they are friendly or if we're about to become a tragic footnote in some galactic history book." "Guess it's time to find out," Vex declared, straightening herself in the chair. "Helm, plot us a course. Let's introduce ourselves." The crew, seasoned misfits from various corners of the galaxy, scrambled into action. Vex watched them with a kind of motherly pride if a mother was a half-drunk pirate queen and her children were rowdy space rats. Minutes later, the ship buzzed with anticipation as they closed in on the alien Dreadnought. The thing was a beast, all sharp edges and ominous bulk, like a migraine given physical form. Vex grinned. "Looks like it's seen better days. We might be able to patch it up and sell it to the highest bidder." Torv glanced at her, one eyebrow raised. "Assuming it doesn't eat us first." "Always with the bright side," Vex chuckled, standing up. "All right, team, gear up, we're going in." The boarding party was small but efficient. Vex, Torv, and a couple of red shirts they picked up from a space station pub. They suited up, checking their gear with the same care someone might use when handling a live grenade. As they docked with the Dreadnought, the airlock opened with a groan, like the ship itself was waking from a bad dream. Inside, the corridors were eerily silent, save for the echo of their footsteps. The walls were adorned with alien symbols, each one more foreboding than the last. "Nice place," Torv muttered, his voice crackling through the comms. "Wonder if they are hiring decorators." Vex chuckled. "Yeah, with a color scheme like this, it's a wonder they don't get more visitors. Let's stick together, see if we can find the command center." The team moved deeper into the belly of the beast, flashlights cutting through the gloom. Every corner seemed to hold a threat, every shadow a lurking horror. Vex's heart pounded, but she masked it with bravado. Eventually, they reached what looked like the control room. The place was a mess, like a drunken brawl had taken place between architecture and entropy. Monitors flickered with unreadable data, and a hulking central console demanded their attention. "All right," Vex said, approaching the console. "Let's see what secrets you're hiding." She began tapping buttons, each beep and whir an act of defiance. Torv hovered nearby, scanning the room. "This place feels wrong, Cap, like it's gonna wake up and swat us like flies." "Relax, Torv, it's just a big metal husk. If it had wanted us dead, we'd be goo by now," Vex reassured him, though she wasn't entirely convinced herself. The console sputtered to life, and a holographic display materialized, revealing a message in several languages, none of them human. Fortunately, the universal translator had a knack for alien gibberish. "Attention, all sentient beings," it droned, as if the universe had a grudge against them. "The Galactic Coalition has declared humanity a threat to cosmic stability. Effective immediately, human reproduction is prohibited." Vex blinked, then laughed. "Well, that's one way to deal with us, ban us from procreating," Torv snorted. "Like that's gonna stop humanity. We're like cosmic cockroaches, Hard to kill and impossible to control. Vex nodded. Yeah, but it seems these folks have built themselves a fancy little enforcement tool. Bet it's somewhere on this ship. Torv glanced around. A gravity weapon, maybe. Something to sterilize the Earth without mussing up the decor too much. Sounds about right, Vex replied, her grin returning. Guess we'd better find it before someone uses it to put us on the endangered species list. Their jovial mood was cut short by the sound of metal scraping against metal somewhere deep within the ship. Looks like the welcoming committee's here, Torv muttered, hand on his blaster. Vex raised her own weapon, a battered plasma pistol she called Old Faithful. Time to see if these guys speak lead. The corridor outside the control room echoed with the approach of what could only be described as unfriendly. The team tensed, ready to trade words for fire. The aliens that rounded the corner were not the diplomatic type. Tall, spindly creatures with skin like polished granite and eyes like black holes, they emanated a palpable aura of menace. "Hey, guys," Vex called out, trying for casual and landing somewhere between foolish and suicidal. "You here to negotiate, or should we skip straight to the part where you try to kill us?" The lead alien, if it could be called that, responded with a guttural hiss, the universal sign for hostile intent. "Yep," Torv said, the sarcasm thick enough to cut with a knife. "They definitely want to kill us." "Figures," Vex replied as the first shots whizzed past her head. "Draw them out, Torv. Let's see if they bleed." As the corridor erupted in a cacophony of blaster fire, Vex's instincts took over. She ducked, rolled, and returned fire, each shot a defiant roar against the darkness. Torv fought beside her, a grumbling bear of a man with a penchant for violence and a skill to match. The red shirts, bless their brave souls, did their best not to die too quickly. The aliens, for all their technological superiority, did not anticipate the sheer stubbornness of human survival. One by one they fell, each with a surprised look, as if dying wasn't in their job description. When the last alien hit the deck, Vex wiped her brow, grinning through the adrenaline. "Well, that was fun." "Your idea of fun is seriously messed up, Cap," Torv replied, reloading his weapon with a bemused shake of his head. "Keeps us alive, doesn't it?" Vex shot back, examining her team. Everyone still in one piece. A chorus of affirmative grunts met her ears, and Vex relaxed. "Good. Now let's find that weapon and show the universe what happens when it tries to mess with Earth." As they moved deeper into the ship, Vex couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning. The Dreadnought held more secrets, and she intended to uncover every last one. Whatever the Galactic Coalition had planned, humanity wasn't going to roll over. Not while she was around. "Onward, fearless leader," Torv muttered, a hint of admiration in his voice. "Onward," Vex agreed, her grin as sharp as the edge of a black hole. "Let's make the bastards regret ever hearing the name human." With that, they plunged further into the ship's bowels, ready to defy the galaxy with nothing but grit, gallows humor, and an indomitable will to survive. The universe might not be ready for them, but they sure as hell were ready for it. They moved through the labyrinthine corridors of the Dreadnought, Vex leading the way with a confidence that bordered on reckless. It wasn't like they had time to stop for a map or a cup of coffee. Each passage looked more foreboding than the last, like the ship was designed by someone who hated corridors and had a vendetta against straight lines. "Whoever built this place had a PhD in mildly unsettling," Vex said, her voice a crackle through the shared comms. "Would it have killed them to put up a sign or two?" "Probably," Torv grumbled. "Bet the signs are all rigged to explode." The red shirts glanced nervously around, their blaster grips slick with sweat. They had the look of men who'd signed up for an adventure and received a horror movie instead. The ship's interior was a metallic maze, every corner promising something nasty lurking just out of sight. The air was stale, a recycled breath of something long dead and not quite forgotten. The occasional flickering light added to the ambience, making it clear the ship hadn't been cleaned since its last massacre. "This place could use a little feng shui," Vex observed, stepping over a pile of alien debris that looked suspiciously like bones. Maybe a potted plant or two. Keep dreaming, Cap, Torv replied, his gruff tone carrying an undercurrent of amusement. The only thing green around here is the mold growing in that corner. Vex snorted, her eyes scanning the walls for anything resembling a control interface. We're getting close to the central control room, she said, jabbing her finger toward a door that looked slightly more important than its neighbors, mostly because it was bigger and had more incomprehensible alien script scribbled on it. What's it say? Torv asked, eyeing the script with suspicion. Probably keep out or beware of the dog, Vex replied, shouldering her way through. The door slid open with a reluctant hiss, revealing a vast chamber dominated by an array of consoles and screens displaying an assortment of arcane symbols and diagrams. Looks like we hit the jackpot, Torv muttered, stepping inside and giving the room the once-over. Or the world's worst arcade. Vex approached the central console, her fingers brushing over the alien controls. Let's see what we're dealing with, she murmured, her expression one of determination mingled with a hint of madness. Something in here must control the gravity weapon. The translator kicked in, projecting translations above the controls. It was like reading a cosmic instruction manual, complete with the subtext of impending doom. Ah, Vex said, her eyes narrowing at one diagram in particular. Looks like this big nasty thing can suck Earth into a black hole. Lovely. Well, that just made my day, Torv said, deadpan. Any idea how to turn it off before we all get sucked into existential oblivion? Vex poked a few buttons, a chorus of beeps responding like a dissatisfied audience. Working on it. It's not exactly intuitive. You know, for a race worried about humans breeding, they sure made this a pain in the ass to disable. Probably some kind of cosmic population control, Torv grumbled, casting a wary eye over his shoulder. Think they offer coupons for vasectomies. If they do, I'm not cashing in, Vex replied, scowling at the uncooperative console. We need to find the weapon's power source and cut it off. These plans show it somewhere deep within the ship. Naturally, Torv snorted. Where else would you put the off switch for a planet killer? Just then, an alarm blared, echoing through the chamber with a sound that was unpleasantly reminiscent of an air raid siren mixed with a cat in heat. Looks like our trespassing didn't go unnoticed, Vex observed, drawing her weapon with a grimace. Time to move, people. They bolted from the control room, the red shirts finally proving their worth by not tripping over their own feet. The Dreadnought's corridors were suddenly alive with activity, the thrum of alien machinery growing louder, more insistent. It was as if the ship itself was waking up, and it wasn't happy to find humans rummaging through its drawers. Any idea where we're going? One of the red shirts, a young man with a regrettable mustache, asked as they ran. Not a clue, Vex called back over her shoulder. But anywhere but here sounds like a plan. Torv led the way, his instincts guiding him through the twisting passages like a veteran rat in a particularly hostile maze. The ship groaned and shuddered, the walls vibrating with a hum that could only mean trouble. They burst into a larger chamber, this one filled with towering conduits and humming machinery. The air was noticeably warmer, the heat radiating from a massive device that dominated the room's center, a tangled mass of cables and ominous glowing panels. Vex skidded to a halt, eyes narrowing at the monstrosity. Bingo, she breathed. That's the gravity weapon's power core. Let's blow this thing and get out before they decide to test it on us. Any bright ideas on how to do that? Torv asked, glancing around for potential explosive implements. Working on it, Vex replied, already moving to the nearest console. She tapped a few buttons, trying to access any kind of self-destruct protocol. Guess they don't have a big red button labeled explode. As they worked, the sound of approaching footsteps echoed down the corridor. The aliens were closing in, and they didn't sound like they were bringing welcome baskets. We've got company, Torv warned, raising his weapon. Hold them off, Vex ordered, fingers flying over the console. I'll see if I can rig this thing to blow. Torv nodded, the red shirts flanking him as they prepared to make their last stand. The first aliens rounded the corner, hissing their displeasure at finding humans in what was clearly their private space. "Here they come," Torv muttered, opening fire. The corridor erupted in a storm of plasma shots and alien shrieks, a cacophony of violence that echoed through the ship's bowels. Vex barely noticed, her focus entirely on the console. Each beep and whir was a promise, each error a curse. Come on," she muttered through gritted teeth. "There's got to be a way to overload this thing." Inspiration struck like a lightning bolt to the brain. With a few deft movements, she rerouted the power flow, a wicked grin spreading across her face as the core began to pulse angrily. "Got it. Just a few more seconds and this place is gonna light up like a firework." Torv grunted, ducking behind cover as alien fire rained down around them. "Hurry it up, Cap. We're running out of room to duck." The aliens pressed forward, relentless and determined. Their tactics were rudimentary but effective, overwhelm with numbers and hope the bullets run out. The red shirts fought valiantly, their aim surprisingly decent given the circumstances. Finally, the console beeped one last time, a triumphant sound that made Vex's heart leap. "Done," she shouted, slamming her palm down on the final command. "Back to the ship before this whole place goes up in smoke." They sprinted for the exit, dodging alien bodies and stray plasma bolts. Behind them, the power core surged, a rising crescendo of energy that threatened to tear the ship apart from the inside out. "Move, move, move," Vex urged, her voice a whip crack that drove them onward. The Dreadnought's corridors blurred past in a frenetic rush, the ship groaning ominously as its systems began to tear themselves apart. They reached their own ship, a beacon of salvation amid the chaos of impending destruction. The airlock closed behind them with a reassuring thunk, sealing them off from the chaos outside. "Punch it," Vex ordered, collapsing into her command chair, the duct tape squeaking in protest. "Get us the hell out of here." The ship lurched into motion, the engines screaming as they powered away from the disintegrating Dreadnought. Through the viewport, the alien vessel began to fracture, bursts of light erupting from within as the gravity weapon's power core tore itself to pieces. "Well," Torv said, watching the spectacle with grim satisfaction. "That's one way to take care of a problem." Vex managed a weary grin. "I'll drink to that," she agreed, brushing a stray lock of hair from her face. "Nice work, team." "We just saved Earth from being turned into a cosmic donut." The crew cheered, the red shirts whooping with relief. They had survived, and more importantly, they had struck a blow against those who would see them erased from the universe. "But what now?" one of the red shirts asked, still catching his breath. Vex leaned back, a sly smile tugging at her lips. "Now we head home. And maybe, just maybe, make some noise while we're at it. Let the galaxy know humanity isn't going down without a fight." With Earth safe for another day, Vex and her crew set a course for home, their ship a defiant speck against the vastness of space. They had faced down the worst the galaxy had to offer and walked away the victors. Not bad for a bunch of misfits with a knack for trouble. The Dreadnought shuddered as Vex and her ragtag band of misfits dashed down another stretch of dark, metallic corridor. The whole ship seemed to have developed a severe case of indigestion, creaking and groaning like it was in desperate need of some cosmic antacid. "Great," Vex muttered under her breath, narrowly dodging a panel that decided to eject itself from the wall. "If this place falls apart before we blow it up, I'm gonna be pissed." Torv, running just behind her, snorted. "Just think of it as helping the process along. We're just accelerating decay." With every step, the sound of alien footsteps grew louder, echoing ominously through the ship. They were multiplying like a bad case of space lice, and Vex's patience was thinning just as fast. "Where's Zari when you need her?" Vex grumbled, skidding to a halt just long enough to take a few potshots down the corridor. Plasma sizzled past her head, close enough that she could almost smell the ozone. As if summoned by sheer force of will, or perhaps the universe's cruel sense of timing, Zari Quillen appeared, her engineering kit clutched tightly in her hand, and an expression on her face that suggested she might be contemplating murder. "You rang?" she asked, her voice dripping with sarcasm. "Perfect timing," Vex said, motioning for Zari to follow. "We need a plan that doesn't involve us becoming alien barbecue." "Working on it," Zari replied tersely. "Give me a second to think. My brain's still trying to process how we're not already toast." The corridor opened into another chamber, this one lined with what looked like server racks, alien tech that Zari could only assume was crucial to the ship's operation. It was an opportunity if they could exploit it. "All right, listen up," Zari began, her mind racing. "These systems might be able to overload entire sections of the ship. We can force a chain reaction, turn their own tech against them." Torv raised an eyebrow. "That sounds dangerous." "Because it is," Zari shot back. "But do you have any better ideas?" "Let's just say I'm curious about your plan B," Torv replied with a smirk. Vex grinned, slapping Zari on the back. "Crazy plans are my favorite kind. Let's make it happen." Together, they approached the nearest terminal. Zari's fingers flew across the alien interface, her engineering skills put to the ultimate test. She muttered under her breath, her words a mix of curses and prayers to any deity that might be listening. "Do you even know what you're doing?" a red shirt asked, peering over her shoulder. Zari didn't even look up. "Nope. But when has that ever stopped us before?" The room was filled with the low hum of machinery, the air thick with tension. Each beep from the terminal was like a heartbeat, counting down to whatever catastrophe they were about to unleash. Vex paced restlessly, occasionally peeking down the corridor to ensure the aliens hadn't decided to make an impromptu visit. "How's it looking, Zari?" "Like the universe's most complicated Sudoku," Zari replied dryly. "But I've got this. Just keep your trigger fingers ready." Torv leaned against a console, trying to look casual while keeping an eye on the exit. "You know, if I get out of this alive, I'm taking a vacation, somewhere quiet, with no aliens or weapons of mass destruction." "Good luck finding that," Vex said, grinning. "Probably just as rare as a sane day in this crew." The terminal emitted a particularly loud beep, and Zari's eyes widened. "Okay, I think I've got it. If I reroute this power here, we can create a feedback loop. Should fry their systems and with any luck, chain react through the ship's infrastructure." "Sounds like a plan," Vex said, rolling her shoulders as if preparing for a fight. "Everybody ready?" The crew nodded, the red shirts looking a little pale but determined. They weren't exactly seasoned warriors, but they weren't going to back down either. It was inspiring in a "we're all gonna die together" kind of way. Zari took a deep breath, her fingers hovering over the final command. "Let's light this candle." With a decisive click, the terminal responded, the alien script flashing an angry red. The machinery around them juddered to life, the hum rising to an ominous crescendo. "Time to move," Vex ordered, waving the crew towards the exit. "This place is about to get real unfriendly." They ran, the corridor blurring past in a disorienting rush. Behind them, machinery exploded in showers of sparks, the ship's systems protesting their imminent demise. "Hey, Zari," Torv called out as they sprinted. "Next time you decide to blow up an alien ship, maybe give us a little more room to run." "I'll add it to the list," Zari replied, laughter bubbling up despite the chaos around them. "Right between invent a new energy source and world peace." As they reached another junction, Vex caught sight of a flicker of movement, a shadow amidst the chaos. "Hold up," she yelled, skidding to a halt and raising her weapon. The others followed suit, forming a defensive line. The aliens were closing in, their silhouettes barely visible in the flickering emergency lights. Their hisses and growls echoed through the corridor, a sinister symphony of displeasure. "Looks like they're not big on the whole let's talk this out approach," Torv remarked, raising his weapon. Vex chuckled darkly, her eyes narrowing. "Diplomacy's overrated. Never met a problem that couldn't be solved with a little brute force." The first alien lunged, its form barely recognizable but its intent unmistakable. Plasma fire erupted, the corridor lighting up with the flash of weaponry. The air was thick with the smell of scorched metal and burnt ozone. Zari, Vex yelled over the chaos, her voice strained. Any chance you got a trick up your sleeve? Zari ducked behind a fallen panel, her mind racing. The ship was alive with potential, too much power, too many systems on the brink of collapse. If we can find a way to channel the overload, use it as a weapon. Then what are we waiting for? Torv barked, firing another volley. Point us in the right direction. Zari glanced around, her gaze landing on a nearby maintenance hatch. There. If we can tap into the power grid, we might be able to send a surge through the ship's hull, fry anything not shielded. Sounds like a plan, Vex said, motioning the crew towards the hatch. Make it happen, Quillen. The hatch led them into the ship's guts, a tangled mess of wires and conduits. It was hot, the air thick with the scent of burning metal. Zari worked quickly, her hands a blur as she connected cables, rerouted power, and generally performed technological miracles. Any day now, Zari, Torv muttered, casting a nervous glance back towards the hatch. The sound of alien pursuit was growing louder, closer. Zari didn't respond, her focus entirely on her work. Sweat dripped down her brow, her fingers dancing across the controls with a precision born of desperation. Finally, she stepped back, eyes flicking to Vex. Ready, Vex grinned, the expression feral. Let's give them a little shock therapy. With a final push of a button, Zari initiated the overload. The ship groaned, the air crackling with energy as power surged through its systems. Lights flickered, alarms blared, and the temperature spiked alarmingly. The aliens, caught in the crossfire, shrieked as energy arced through the corridors, their forms dissolving in the electrical storm. The ship shuddered violently, its death throes echoing through the hull. Time to go, Vex shouted, leading the charge back towards their own ship. Each step was a race against the clock, every second bringing them closer to either salvation or a spectacularly messy end. They reached their ship, the airlock sliding closed with a finality that was both comforting and terrifying. The engines roared to life, the ship lurching into motion as they made their escape. The viewport filled with light as the Dreadnought tore itself apart, the chain reaction consuming the ship piece by piece until nothing remained but debris and a fading memory. We did it, Zari breathed, collapsing into a seat, exhaustion and relief warring for control. Vex sank into her command chair, a weary but triumphant smile on her face. Damn straight. Remind me to buy you a drink when we're back on Earth. Torv leaned against the wall, his expression a mix of disbelief and satisfaction. I'll take two. One for what we did today and one for surviving to tell the tale. The crew was silent, a shared moment of victory and relief. They had faced death and madness and emerged on the other side. It was a hell of a thing and they were too tired to celebrate properly. Yet, as they set a course for Earth, Vex allowed herself a moment to breathe. The universe was vast and uncaring, but they had carved out a small victory, a testament to human ingenuity and sheer stubbornness. And maybe, just maybe, they'd get a chance to do it all again tomorrow. Because in the end, that was what it meant to be human, to fight, to survive, and to laugh in the face of impossible odds. The red shirts settled in, their adrenaline fading, leaving behind only the bone-deep weariness of those who had walked through hell and back. There were no medals waiting for them, no parades or celebrations. Just another day, another fight. But for now, they were alive. And that was enough. The crew of the not-so-great Escape was doing their best impression of sardines in a can, their stolen alien ship barely holding together as Vex, their fearless, or was it reckless, leader, guided them towards who knew what. The ship's dashboard was lit up like a Christmas tree in hell, every warning light blinking with a panic that suggested someone had really messed up when they designed this tub. Vex leaned back in her command chair, which was about as reliable as a politician's promise. All right, folks, if anyone sees an oh shit button, now's a good time to press it. Does that come with a complimentary drink? Torv replied from the scanner station, where he was busy squinting at a screen filled with alien gibberish that might as well have been a toddler's scribble. I'd settle for a stiff one myself, Zari quipped from behind a panel she was pretending to fix. Not that it would make this pile of bolts any less of a death trap. The mood on the bridge was what you'd expect from a group of people who'd just narrowly avoided becoming a permanent feature in the cosmic dust collection. Relieved, sure, but mostly just wondering what could possibly go wrong next. Because something always did. "Hey, Captain," Torv called out, his tone a mix of curiosity and mild dread. "I'm picking up some kind of transmission. Might be important. Or it might just be alien spam." Vex sighed, rubbing her temples as if she could massage the universe into being a bit more sensible. "Well, let's hear it. If it's an offer for extended warranty, we could use it." The static-filled voice that crackled to life over the comms was unexpected, to say the least. "Human vessel, we bring greetings and an offer. We are not your enemies." "Sure sounds like something an enemy would say," Zari remarked, pulling herself upright and crossing her arms. "Probably just trying to lure us into a trap with a free set of steak knives." Vex leaned forward, squinting at the comms panel like it might suddenly explain itself. "This is Captain Vex Nielsen. Exactly who are you, and why shouldn't we assume you're planning to roast us over an open fire?" There was a pause, filled with enough tension you could have bottled it and sold it as a nerve tonic. "We are a faction within the Dralith opposed to the current regime. We wish to aid you in your struggle." "Great. Alien politics," Torv muttered, rolling his eyes. As if our own back home weren't enough of a headache. Vex considered the offer, weighing the risks like a gambler with a particularly bad hand. "All right, say we believe you. What's in it for you? Survival. Our leaders have grown unstable. We believe cooperation with humans may stabilize the situation." "Well, it's good to know intergalactic instability isn't just a human trait," Zari said with a smirk. "Nice to have some company in the leaders who are nuts department." The alien transmission continued. "We can provide you safe passage through this sector, in exchange for information on human technology. We believe it may help us in our own efforts." Vex raised an eyebrow. "So basically, you're saying help us help you." "Precisely." A quick, silent conference with her crew followed, communicated through a series of eye rolls, shrugs, and exasperated expressions. Trusting aliens was about as appealing as a swim in acid, but their options were limited, and the alternative was probably a lot more explosive. "All right," Vex said finally, addressing their new allies. "We're willing to play ball, but any funny business and we'll make sure your ship gets more holes than a conspiracy theory." "Understood. Transmitting coordinates now. We look forward to meeting you." As the transmission ended, Torv let out a low whistle. "So, we're just going to trust them?" "No," Vex replied, adjusting her grip on the controls. "We're going to not trust them, but in a way that might keep us alive a bit longer." "Great. Because trusting anyone in this universe is like playing Russian roulette with a fully loaded gun," Zari added, checking her toolkit as if it might contain the meaning of life. Or, at least, a way to avoid imminent doom. The coordinates led to a sector of space that looked deceptively peaceful. The kind of quiet that usually meant something horrible was quietly lurking just out of sight. Space, in Vex's experience, was like that weird uncle who always had a suspiciously empty van parked in his driveway, never to be trusted. The alien vessel that loomed into view was sleek and intimidating, its hull shimmering with a technology that was both advanced and frankly a bit smug about it. The not-so-great escape docked with all the grace of a drunken elephant, its landing a testament to Vex's piloting skills and the universe's twisted sense of humor. "Remember," Vex said as they prepared to board, "act like we know what we're doing. Confidence is key. And if that fails, bluff like there's no tomorrow, because there might not be." The interior of the alien ship was a maze of corridors that seemed designed to confuse and unsettle, all sharp angles and dim lighting. Perfect for a clandestine meeting or a horror movie set. The crew was greeted by a group of aliens whose appearance was equal parts intriguing and unsettling, kind of like a Picasso painting come to life. Their leader, a tall figure with eyes that seemed to shift colors as you looked at them, stepped forward. "I am Kairax, leader of this faction. Welcome." Appreciate the hospitality, Vex replied, keeping her hand conspicuously close to her sidearm. I'll admit, we're a bit new to the whole interstellar diplomacy thing. Karax made a sound that might have been a laugh or a sneeze. You are direct. I appreciate that in an ally, so what exactly do you need from us? Torv asked, eyeing the aliens with the wary skepticism of someone who'd been burned one too many times by seemingly friendly faces. Karax gestured to a series of holographic displays. Information on your technology, particularly your methods of energy production and weaponry. Our leaders have become obsessed with conquest, and we seek a more sustainable path. Zari exchanged a glance with Vex, her expression saying more than words ever could. So, you're looking for a way to win without blowing everything up, essentially. Well, Vex said, crossing her arms. We can give you some of what you want, but we're not about to hand over the keys to the kingdom. Trust is earned, not given. Karax nodded, a gesture that seemed to transcend language. We understand. In exchange, we offer safe passage and intelligence on the Dralith forces. As the two sides negotiated, the atmosphere was tense but not unfriendly, a delicate balance of mutual need and thinly veiled suspicion. Humans and aliens alike were learning the fine art of diplomacy. Lie enough to get what you want, but not so much that you get caught. All right, Vex said at last. We've got a deal. But remember, we're not here to save the universe just ourselves. If you screw us over, we'll take you down with us. Karax's eyes flickered through a spectrum of colors. A fair warning. We look forward to seeing where this alliance leads. With the agreement in place, the crew returned to their ship, tension still coiling through them like a live wire. Trusting anyone was a risk, but desperate times called for desperate measures, or in their case, desperate deals with alien factions. Well, Torv said as he settled back into his seat, that went better than expected. Nobody's dead and we're not in pieces. Yet always the optimist, Torv, Zari said, grinning. I'm sure there's still plenty of time for things to go terribly wrong. Vex took her place at the controls, a small smile playing at her lips. And that's why we love you, Zari. Your sunny outlook on life. As they undocked and set a course towards whatever passed for safety these days, the crew was left with a peculiar feeling. Hope, perhaps, tempered by the knowledge that in space the only certainty was uncertainty itself. The universe was vast and unforgiving, but for a moment they had allies. Allies with their own agendas, sure, but it was better than nothing. Let's just hope this little arrangement doesn't bite us in the ass, Vex said, mostly to herself. Hey, Zari chimed in from the back. If it does, we'll bite right back. And with that cheery thought, the not-so-great escape hurtled once more into the great unknown, its crew a mix of bravado and blind luck, holding onto the slenderest threads of survival with all the tenacity of a cockroach in a nuclear war. The not-so-great escape was cruising through the void with all the carefree grace of a cat stuck in a bathtub. Vex, lounging in her duct-tape throne of a command chair, kept an eye on the overwhelming array of blinking lights on the ship's dashboard. Each one was a different kind of trouble waiting to happen, a digital symphony of impending doom. Hey, Captain, any chance these lights are just there for decoration? Zari called from beneath the dashboard, where she was doing something that might qualify as engineering, or maybe just aggressive tinkering. Only if you consider your ship's about to explode a festive look, Vex replied, drumming her fingers on her console with a rhythm that could only be described as nervous impatience. A dark shadow loomed just outside the viewport, Karax's ship, maintaining a polite distance. Too polite, maybe. Vex never liked politeness in space. It usually hid a knife aimed at the back. Torv, any welcome messages from our new best friends? Vex leaned back and crossed her arms, squinting at the scanner station where Torv was, as usual, deeply engaged in a staring contest with alien gibberish on the screen. Not much, Captain. Just your standard "we're not going to kill you yet" vibes, Torv remarked, as he tapped at some gummy keys. Something tells me brunch with these guys will involve more lasers than mimosas. The sudden crackle of static on the comms was as welcome as finding a worm in your apple. The voice of K-Rax came through, sounding like a seasick robot. "Human vessel, we regret to inform you that our mission has become compromised." Compromised. Vex raised an eyebrow so high it practically levitated off her forehead. "Please tell me that's alien speak for surprise party. We have been discovered by the Dralith main fleet. Our faction members have been executed." "Well, that's just great," Zari said, emerging from under the dashboard with a smudge of grease on her cheek. "There goes the neighborhood." Torv shot Vex a look. "So, what's our plan, fearless leader? Or are we playing by ear and hoping for the best plan?" Vex snorted. "I'm more of a wing it and pray to whatever deity is listening type, but sure, let's pretend we've got one." The comms crackled again. "You must escape. The Dralith fleet is closing in. We can only delay them for so long. Delay them. We didn't sign up to be sitting ducks, K-Rax." Vex shouted, though she knew it was pointless. The line went dead. K-Rax and his crew had sacrificed themselves by broadcasting false signals, buying a few precious minutes. "Sounds like we've got front-row tickets to our own funeral," Torv muttered, his fingers dancing over the scanner controls. "Nothing like a countdown to keep the blood pumping," Zari added, her voice a blend of sarcasm and resignation. "What's the plan, Vex?" Besides the obvious "don't die," Vex took a deep breath, the kind you take when you're about to jump into a pool of piranhas. "We need to overload the alien tech. If we can create a big enough explosion, maybe we'll buy enough time to slip away in the chaos." "Great. So we're trading one death trap for another," Torv said, not bothering to hide his cynicism. "Just what I needed." Zari was already grabbing her toolkit, a mix of enthusiasm and grim determination on her face. "Let's see if I can make this ship explode on demand. Make sure you don't blow us up in the process," Vex quipped, but there was real concern in her eyes. The corridors of the not-so-great escape felt more ominous than usual as Zari led the way to the alien server racks. The dim lights flickered, casting shadows that danced like ghosts on the walls. "Whoever designed these corridors definitely moonlighted as a horror filmmaker," Torv said, keeping a nervous eye on their surroundings. "Yeah, well, too bad they didn't stick to their day job," Zari replied, arriving at the server room. The alien tech hummed with an unsettling energy, the kind that made your hair stand on end and your teeth itch. "Okay, Zari, what's our ETA on turning this into a makeshift fireworks show?" Vex asked, eyeing the racks like they might suddenly sprout legs and start tap dancing. "Give me 10 minutes, tops. Unless, of course, you want it done right, in which case I have no idea," Zari said, already elbow-deep in wires and circuits. The ship shuddered, a gentle reminder of the Dralith fleet bearing down on them like the universe's least subtle tax collector. "Got 10 minutes to kill. Anyone up for charades?" Torv joked, his nervous energy barely masked by humor. "Sure, but only if we play the version where the loser gets vented into space," Vex shot back, her eyes darting to the viewport where distant specks of light were getting uncomfortably brighter. "Vex, I can't promise this is gonna work," Zari admitted, her focus intense as she fiddled with alien tech that was as user-friendly as a porcupine hug. "Just promise it'll work enough to keep us breathing, and I'll call it a win," Vex replied, checking her sidearm as if it could somehow shoot their problems away. The ship groaned again, a sound like a dying whale or maybe just a really pissed-off one. Torv's console beeped ominously. The Dralith were closing in. "Looks like our dance partners are getting impatient," Torv said, his fingers flying over the keys as he attempted any trick to delay their pursuers. "Zari, now would be a good time for a miracle." Vex called over, her voice tense with the kind of urgency that comes when death is on your doorstep with a fruit basket. "Miracle's a strong word, but I've got something," Zari announced, pulling back with a final adjustment that sent a ripple through the ship systems. The lights flickered violently, and the not-so-great escape trembled as if caught in a cosmic sneeze. "Hold onto your butts," Torv shouted, pretty much summing up their entire strategy. The alien tech, now a ticking time bomb, began its countdown. A digital display flashed with alien numbers that were unsettlingly red, because even aliens knew red meant bad. Vex grabbed the controls, her grip white-knuckled. "Here goes nothing. If this doesn't work, I'm gonna haunt you all." The ship lurched forward, engines roaring with everything they had, which wasn't much but desperate times and all that. The Dralith ships appeared on the scanner like a swarm of angry bees, intent on stinging them into oblivion. "They're right on top of us, Vex," Torv shouted, panic edging into his voice. "Yeah, I can read a scanner," Vex snapped back, trying to maintain some semblance of calm. The makeshift bomb Zari had rigged was nearing its climax, about to unfurl in an explosion that would hopefully not include them in the blast radius. "Zari, your handiwork better be good," Vex yelled as the ship shook violently. "Relax, it's only my life on the line too," Zari shot back, her voice barely above the chaos. With a final, desperate heave, the not-so-great escape shot forward, the roar of the engines a defiant scream against the inevitable. And then, the ship's sensors registered a shockwave, a massive burst of energy that lit up space like a supernova. The Dralith ships scattered, their formation shattered by the unexpected explosion. "Holy shit, it worked," Torv breathed, disbelief coloring his words. "Never doubted you for a second, Zari," Vex lied through her teeth, a grin tugging at her lips. "Yeah, sure, Captain. Next you'll tell me Santa's real," Zari replied, though there was relief in her voice. As the chaos settled and the Dralith fleet struggled to regroup, Vex took a moment to savor the small victory. They were still alive, still in one piece, and still the galaxy's luckiest idiots. "All right, team, let's get the hell out of here before they decide round 2 sounds fun," Vex ordered, steering the ship away from the mess they'd left behind. Their darkest Ior had come and gone, and while they'd emerged a little more battered and a lot less sane, they'd survived. For now, that was enough. "Remind me to put surprise the enemy on our list of strategies," Torv said, settling back into his seat with a weary sigh. "Right after Try Not to Die," Vex agreed, her fingers relaxing on the controls. "Let's not make a habit of this, okay?" Zari suggested, though they all knew better. In space, plans were as fragile as the people who made them. The not-so-great escape continued its flight into the unknown, carrying its crew of misfits with all their sarcasm, bravado, and relentless will to survive. Whatever awaited them next, they'd face it together, armed with nothing but their wits and a stubborn refusal to go quietly into the night. The not-so-great escape limped away from the scene of its latest near-disaster, the dull thunk of the engines a comforting reminder that they were at least moving away from the Dralith fleet. Granted, at the speed of a particularly lazy snail, but moving nonetheless. Vex leaned back in her duct-taped throne of a command chair, her eyes scanning the array of warning lights on the dashboard like a doctor reading a particularly grim medical chart. "All right, team," she announced, doing her best to sound both hopeful and authoritative. "Looks like we're not cosmic dust thanks to Zari's magic touch, so let's see what else we can pull out of this wreck." Zari, still wiping grease from her hands, snorted. "Magic touch. More like a Hail Mary. But hey, I'm a sucker for those odds." Speaking of odds, Torv piped up from the scanner station, which was currently displaying a mix of static and what looked suspiciously like alien cartoon characters. "I've been doing some digging through the ship systems. Found something interesting." "Well, interesting in the way a loaded gun in a kid's birthday party is interesting." Vex raised an eyebrow. "You're not about to tell me we've been sitting on a starkiller this whole time, are you?" No, nothing that dramatic," Torv replied, shaking his head. "Just a forgotten weapons system that might give us more than 2 minutes before becoming space popsicles." "Forgotten, huh? Just like my last birthday," Vex muttered. "All right, show me what you've got, Torv." Torv tapped a few gummy keys, causing the main display to flicker before settling on a schematic that looked as if it had been drawn by a toddler with a crayon and a caffeine addiction. "See that?" He pointed to a section marked with alien symbols, which may or may not have been a recipe for paella. It's a weapons control system. Hidden deep in the bowels of this bucket. Vex squinted at the screen, trying to make sense of the nonsensical. So you're telling me that somewhere in this ship is a kick-ass weapon, and we've just been too busy not dying to notice, pretty much. It's like finding a winning lottery ticket in a dumpster, Torv said, with a grin that suggested he'd done just that on more than one occasion. Okay, color me interested, Vex said, leaning forward. Zari, think you can get that thing humming? Zari let out a long sigh, the kind that suggested she'd rather wrestle a rabid ocelot. Sure, why not? I've got nothing better to do than poke around alien tech that could fry us faster than a summer barbecue. Good, let's get on it. I want us armed with more than sarcasm and duct tape when the Dralith come back for round 2, Vex ordered, a wry smile tugging at her lips. As Zari and Torv set to work, Vex took a moment to herself. Her crew was a ragtag bunch of misfits, but they were her misfits, and that meant something in this unforgiving expanse. Their odds might be worse than a snowball's in a supernova, but they had one thing going for them: sheer bloody-minded stubbornness. Hey, Captain, Zari called from beneath the dashboard, where she appeared to be intimately acquainted with the ship's guts. We've got a problem. Is this the we're all gonna die kind of problem, or the Vex forgot to pay her bar tab kind? Neither. Well, maybe a bit of both. The system's powered down and locked tighter than a politician's wallet. Vex scowled. Can you hack it? Zari's head emerged, eyes gleaming with the kind of dangerous curiosity that usually ended in explosions. Oh, I can try. But I hope you like living dangerously. Danger's our middle name, right, Torv? Vex shot back, knowing full well that Torv's middle name was actually Eugene. Sure thing, Captain. Right after reckless and poor decision-making, Torv replied, not missing a beat. The not-so-great escapes corridors were a maze of wires and panels, most of which were either sparking ominously or held together by equal parts hope and spit. The crew moved with a practiced ease through their makeshift home, each step underscoring the dire stakes they faced. All right, Zari, Vex said as they approached the section hiding the forgotten weapons controls. Work your magic. And by magic, I mean whatever trickery keeps us from turning into a fireworks display. Zari nodded, already lost in the tangle of alien tech. This is going to take some finesse. And by finesse, I mean blind luck and maybe a little cursing. Vex watched as Zari's hands disappeared into the mess of wires, her brow furrowed in concentration. You've got this, Zari. Just remember, failure's not an option. Mostly because I hate paperwork. I'll keep that in mind, Zari said, her voice muffled by the confines of the panel she'd buried herself in. As Zari worked, Vex paced, her mind a flurry of possibilities and what-ifs. It wasn't just about survival, it was about sending a message. They weren't just some backwater crew to be picked off like flies. They were fighters, stubborn as hell and twice as lucky, and they'd make damn sure everyone knew it. Torv, keep an eye on those scanners, Vex instructed, casting a glance towards the viewport where the stars mocked them with their serene indifference. Let me know the second anyone else decides to crash our party. Already on it, Captain, Torv replied, tapping away with the kind of focus that suggested he was channeling his anxiety into every keystroke. The minutes ticked by, each one a reminder of how fleeting life was in the vast, uncaring void. The ship hummed with an unfamiliar energy as Zari slowly coaxed the alien system back to life. Okay, I think I've got something, Zari announced, her voice tinged with both triumph and disbelief. The system's up and running, but it's not exactly straightforward, since when is anything ever straightforward around here? Vex quipped, peering over Zari's shoulder. This thing's got more safeguards than a vault at a paranoia convention, Zari continued, her fingers dancing over the controls. But I think I can bypass them. Probably, Vex echoed, her tone light but her expression serious. Hey, I didn't say I was a miracle worker. Just a really good engineer, Zari replied with a crooked grin. Torv's voice cut in, laced with just enough tension to set Vex's nerves on edge. Vex, we've got company. Looks like the Dralith decided they weren't done with us after all. Of course they did, Vex muttered, rolling her eyes skyward as if hoping for divine intervention. Zari, how's our weapon looking? It's temperamental, Zari admitted, which was about as comforting as discovering a snake in your boot. Just do your best. We're gonna need all the firepower we can muster, Vex instructed, her focus shifting to the viewport where shapes were beginning to emerge from the starry backdrop. The Dralith ships were back, and they didn't look any friendlier than before. Their sleek forms cut through the void like sharks scenting blood, and Vex could almost hear the distant rumble of their engines. Torv, how long until they're in weapons range? Vex asked, her voice steady despite the adrenaline surging through her veins. Minutes, maybe less. Depends on how itchy their trigger fingers are feeling today, Torv replied, his gaze fixed on the screen. All right, Zari, time to work some of that magic, Vex ordered, knowing full well that magic was just another word for luck and a whole lot of duct tape. Firing up the system now, Zari said, her hands a blur over the controls. But it's gonna be touch and go. This thing's about as cooperative as a cat in a bath. The ship's interior lights flickered, the hum of the alien tech growing louder until it filled the air with a thrumming energy that made Vex's skin tingle. Here goes nothing, Zari muttered, hitting a final sequence of buttons. The not-so-great escape shuddered, a low whine building in its depths as the weapon system powered up. Vex held her breath, watching as the Dralith ships inched closer, their menace palpable even at a distance. Zari, now would be a great time for a miracle, Vex urged, her eyes fixed on the viewport. With a final, desperate adjustment, Zari activated the weapon. The ship vibrated violently, the air crackling with energy as the system unleashed its fury. A beam of brilliant light erupted from the not-so-great escape, slicing through the void with a precision that belied the ship's ragtag nature. It cut a swath through the Dralith formation, sending ships spiraling into chaos as they scrambled to escape its reach. Holy hell, it actually worked, Torv breathed, awe coloring his words. Never doubted you for a second, Zari, Vex said, her heart racing with the thrill of the unexpected victory. Liar, Zari shot back, unable to hide the satisfaction in her voice. As the adrenaline faded and the Dralith ships retreated, Vex allowed herself a rare moment of triumph. They'd done it. Against all odds, they'd turned the tide in their favor, however temporarily. All right, let's get the hell out of here before they regroup and decide to try their luck again, Vex commanded, steering the ship away from the battleground. Next time, remind me to book us a nice vacation instead of playing hero, Torv said, settling back into his seat with a weary sigh. Hey, who needs a beach when you've got the thrill of certain death? Zari quipped, though there was relief in her eyes. Together, they navigated through the stars, a crew bound by shared danger and the indomitable will to survive. Whatever lay ahead, they'd face it together, armed with their wits, a newfound weapon, and just enough luck to keep them flying another day. The not-so-great escape limped away from the smoking remnants of the Dralith fleet, leaving behind a scene that could have been mistaken for a particularly violent fireworks display. Vex Nielsen, the ship's captain and undisputed queen of bad ideas, was sitting in her command chair, which was held together with more duct tape than any self-respecting piece of furniture should endure. Well, that was a close one, Vex said, leaning back and feeling the familiar squeak of adhesive surrender beneath her. Torv, keep us moving. And by moving, I mean away from anyone who might want us dead. Or worse, in for questioning. Got it, Captain. Though I'm starting to think close one is just another day at the office for us, Torv replied, his fingers dancing over the scanner controls in a way that suggested he either had a knack for the tech or was just very good at pretending he did. Zari Quillen, the ship's engineer and resident miracle worker, emerged from beneath the dashboard where she'd been communing with wires and circuits. Her hair was a mess of static, and there was a smudge on her cheek that looked suspiciously like engine grease. Well, the weapon's still functioning. I'd call it a success except for the part where we almost died. Again, details, Vex said with a dismissive wave. Let's focus on the fact that we're alive and kicking. And maybe a little bit of the kicking was done by us. Zari rolled her eyes. Yeah, we're the heroes of the story. Assuming the story doesn't end with us blowing up. Now you're getting it, Vex quipped, tapping her armrest as if that might rearrange the universe in their favor. Torv interrupted with a cough that was probably meant to be polite but instead sounded like a dying engine. Captain, I think we've got a situation. Of course we do, Vex said with a sigh. Did you expect anything less? Go on, give it to me straight. Well, remember that delightful little ban on human reproduction that the Coalition decided was a fun idea? Torv asked, raising an eyebrow. How could I forget? It's not every day someone tries to tell an entire species to stop making more of themselves. Kind of like asking a cat to stop knocking things off tables, Vex replied, her voice dripping with sarcasm. Looks like the ban's been lifted, Torv announced, his tone suggesting he was waiting for a brass band to march through the ship in celebration. Isn't that just peachy? Zari muttered, crossing her arms. We can start making little versions of ourselves to inherit this mess. Vex chuckled, a sound that was more like gravel than music. Perfect. Just what the galaxy needs, more of us. I'm guessing it's not because they've suddenly developed a soft spot for human babies, Zari said, eyeing the scanner readouts as if they might hold the secrets of the universe. Probably not, Torv agreed. But who cares? We've got more pressing matters. Like not exploding. Good point, Vex said, drumming her fingers on the armrest. All right, people, let's figure out how to keep this bucket afloat while we're busy being the galaxy's favorite troublemakers. The not-so-great escape flew on, the ship a patchwork of alien tech and human ingenuity. The corridors, still unsettling in their design, echoed with the hum of power and the occasional curse from Zari as she tinkered with something that was likely crucial to their continued existence. Vex considered the weapon they just unleashed, a silent reminder that sometimes the galaxy's best intentions were just another way of saying we're afraid of you. She couldn't blame them, really. Humans had a knack for making themselves a nuisance, and Vex was living proof of that particular talent. All right, team, let's keep our eyes peeled, Vex instructed, pulling herself back to the present. And I mean that metaphorically, Torv. No actual peeling. Damn, there goes my weekend plans, Torv replied, grinning as he set the scanners to sweep for any signs of trouble. Back in the engine room, Zari was elbow-deep in another alien contraption, her face a picture of concentration. Hey, Vex, she called, her voice echoing slightly in the metal-lined space. I think I found a way to boost our defenses if the Dralith come back for round 2. Or 3. How many rounds have we had now? Too many, Vex replied, wandering over to where Zari was working. What have you got? Something that might keep us from being space dust next time, Zari said, gesturing to a series of coils and panels that looked more at home in a sci-fi horror than a spaceship. But it's gonna take some finesse. And maybe a little swearing. Swearing's free, Vex said with a smirk. Get to it. I'd rather skip the space dust experience. Zari nodded, already lost in the task at hand. Vex watched her work, feeling a strange sense of calm amidst the chaos. They might be flying by the seat of their pants, but they were still flying. Captain, there's another signal coming in, Torv called from the bridge, and Vex reluctantly tore her gaze away from Zari's handiwork. Patch it through, Vex instructed, settling back into her chair with a resigned sigh. Let's hear what fresh hell awaits. The comms crackled to life, and a voice that was far too polite for comfort filled the cabin. Human vessel, we bring greetings and an offer. We are not your enemies. Well, that's not ominous at all, Vex muttered, rolling her eyes. What do you want? We wish to discuss terms of cooperation. The voice continued, as smooth as oil on water. Mutual benefit. Translation. We'd like to use you until you're not useful anymore, Zari said under her breath, earning a nod of agreement from Torv. Thanks but no thanks, Vex replied, her tone sharp enough to cut through the static. We're doing just fine on our own. Your ship's about to explode, the voice warned, and Vex could almost hear the smile behind the words. Your concern is touching. Vex shot back, leaning forward. "But I think we'll manage, very well. We will await your response," the voice said, and the transmission ended with a click that felt far too final. "Well, that was fun," Torv said, shaking his head. "Anyone else get the feeling they're not gonna take no for an answer? Probably not," Vex agreed, rubbing her temples as if that might ward off the headache threatening to settle in. "But we'll cross that bridge when we come to it, or blow it up. Whichever comes first." Zari emerged from the tangles of wires and tech, wiping her hands on a rag that was probably dirtier than her hands. "So, what's our next move, fearless leader?" "We keep moving," Vex replied, her voice firm. "We find somewhere to regroup, make repairs. And then we figure out who else we can piss off." "Sounds like a plan," Zari said with a crooked grin. "Count me in." With a shared sense of determination that was as fragile as the ship itself, they set their course into the unknown. The stars stretched out before them, a vast, indifferent audience to their struggles. But as long as they were together, as long as they had each other, Vex knew they'd find a way. "All right, people," Vex said, settling back into her seat with a sense of satisfaction that was rare and fleeting. "Let's show the galaxy what we're made of. And maybe, just maybe, we'll live to tell the tale." As they sailed into the darkness, leaving behind the wreckage of their latest encounter, the crew of the not-so-great escape knew they had a long way to go. But with a little luck, a lot of stubbornness, and just the right amount of insanity, they might just make it. "Onward to whatever fresh hell awaits," Torv said, and for once everyone was in agreement. The not-so-great escape might not have been the pride of the fleet, but it was theirs. And for Vex Nielsen and her band of misfits, that was more than enough. The not-so-great escape drifted through the cosmos, a ragtag survivor of more close calls than a cat with poor judgment. Vex Nielsen, still perched on her duct-tape throne, stared at the stars with the kind of weary admiration usually reserved for heroic last stands. She had neither a hero's death wish nor a villain's monologue, just a healthy obsession with staying alive and poking fun at the absurdity of it all. "So we're heroes now?" Torv asked from the scanner station, his voice heavy with disbelief and a hint of indigestion. "Feels anticlimactic. I know, right?" Vex replied, offering him a grin that was as tired as it was genuine. "Saves the universe, gets a pat on the back, and maybe a coupon for a free drink if you're lucky." "I'm holding out for parade," Zari chimed in, emerging from the bowels of the ship with the grace of someone who'd just won a wrestling match with a machine. "Something with balloons. Maybe a brass band." "Balloons are overrated," Vex said, waving a dismissive hand. "All they do is pop and make sad squeaky noises. Kind of like our thrusters after that last skirmish." The crew shared a chuckle, a momentary break from the tension that had been as constant as the stars in their viewports. They'd made it through by the skin of their teeth, each one a survivor of their own making. "So, what's the plan?" Zari asked, wiping her hands on her pants in a futile attempt to remove the ever-present grime. "Do we actually go back to Earth?" "Back to Earth," Vex echoed as if she could taste the words. "Yeah, I suppose we do. Feels weird, doesn't it?" Torv mused. "Going back to a planet where a parking ticket's a bigger threat than an alien fleet," Zari snorted. "That's if we don't get hit with a fine for saving the world without a permit. Council's probably drafting the paperwork as we speak," Vex replied, rolling her eyes. "But yeah, we've got a homecoming to plan. Assuming the ship doesn't fall apart on re-entry." The thought was both comforting and nerve-wracking. The not-so-great escape had become more than just a ship. It was their sanctuary, their prison, their sometimes cooperative ally. And it hadn't betrayed them yet, which was more than Vex could say for some of her past partners. "Think they'll throw us a parade?" Torv asked, more out of curiosity than actual hope. "Or maybe we'll just get a stern talking to. Thanks for saving humanity, now don't do it again. Knowing our luck, we'll get both," Vex replied with a smirk. "Come on, let's get this bucket headed in the right direction." ******, the journey back towards Earth was almost anticlimactic, if you ignored the groans and creaks of a ship that sounded like it had been through one too many bar fights. Vex sat in her command chair with a look that suggested she was seriously contemplating a nap, if not a full-on hibernation. "Home sweet home," she muttered as the blue marble of Earth grew larger in the viewport, a swirl of stubborn hope and bureaucratic nightmares. "Looks almost peaceful," Torv commented, his voice tinged with a mix of nostalgia and skepticism. "But I think we all know better. Peaceful is just another word for waiting to explode," Zari added, glancing up from a control panel she'd been fidgeting with. "We're just the idiots trying to keep the pieces from flying too far apart." As Earth filled the view, the crew couldn't help but feel a twinge of something not quite like pride, more like the relief of making it to the finish line without collapsing in a heap. They'd done the impossible and lived to gripe about it. "Think anyone will even notice we're back?" Torv asked, half joking. "I'd be surprised if they didn't at least send someone to yell at us for the paperwork," Vex said, stretching her arms above her head. "But honestly, I'll take it. After everything, a little bit of normalcy sounds about as good as a vacation." "Normal's overrated," Zari replied, though her smile suggested she wasn't entirely opposed to the idea. "But it'll be nice to not have to worry about being vaporized every 5 minutes. The comms panel crackled to life, and a distinctly unimpressed voice announced their welcome. "This is Earth Coalition Control. Unidentified vessel, state your purpose." Vex replied, a devilish grin spreading across her face. "Well, we thought we'd drop by, save the universe, and maybe pick up some groceries." There was a noticeable pause, the kind that suggested the operator was either consulting a manual or a supervisor, or both. "Stand by for inspection and debriefing, of course," Vex murmured, her tone thick with faux courtesy. "Wouldn't want to skip the red tape. Think they'll let us keep the ship?" Torv wondered aloud, scratching his head. "Not if they are smart," Zari quipped. "But since when did smart ever factor into bureaucracy?" The not-so-great escape descended through the atmosphere with the grace of a brick, landing at an outpost that looked like it had seen better days. A lot of them, in fact. Vex and her crew braced themselves for whatever reception awaited them. "Here we go," Vex said, rising from her chair with all the enthusiasm of someone heading to a dentist appointment without Novocaine. "Let's meet our adoring fans." The debriefing room was about as welcoming as a tax audit. A long table sat in the middle of the room, flanked by stern-faced officials who looked like they'd been born scowling. Captain Nielsen, the lead official, began, his voice as dry as the paperwork piled on his desk. "I must say your actions have caused quite a stir." Vex folded her arms, regarding them with a mix of amusement and defiance. "Good. That was kind of the point, your disregard for protocol," he continued, but Vex cut him off with a raised hand. "Look, we saved your collective asses. Twice. Maybe more, I lost count. So how about skipping the lecture and getting to the part where you pat us on the back and send us on our merry way?" The official blinked, clearly not used to this level of bluntness. "Be that as it may, there are still procedures and paperwork, I know," Vex interrupted again, her patience thinner than a spacewalk suit. "Tell you what, you keep the paperwork and we'll just take a hot shower, a decent meal, and maybe a cold drink." "Deal?" Zari and Torv stood behind her, nodding in agreement and trying not to look like they were itching to bolt for the nearest exit. The official sighed, a sound that was both exasperated and resigned. "Very well. But this isn't over, Captain Nielsen." "There will be consequences. Wouldn't expect anything less," Vex replied, flashing a grin that spoke of triumph and irreverence. "Now, if you'll excuse us, we've got some celebrating to do." Back on the ship, the crew gathered in the cramped common area, each with a drink in hand and a contentedness that bordered on smug. They'd done it. They'd survived. They'd saved the universe, or at least their corner of it. And now, for the first time in what felt like eons, there was nothing left to do but breathe. "Here's to us," Vex said, raising her glass. "The idiots who somehow pulled it off. To bad ideas and duct tape," Zari added, clinking her glass against Vex's. "And to whoever's dumb enough to try topping this," Torv chimed in, joining the toast. They drank, the clink of glasses echoing in the small space, a sound of victory and camaraderie. For a moment the universe felt just a little less daunting, a little more manageable. They were home, and for now that was enough. As the laughter and stories flowed, Vex leaned back, watching her crew with a smile. They'd faced the impossible and come out the other side. Scarred, certainly, but stronger for it. "Think we'll ever do anything this crazy again?" Zari asked, her eyes alight with mischief and the promise of future adventures. "Probably," Vex replied with a shrug. "But let's give it a minute yet. I think we've earned a bit of peace." "Peace," Torv repeated, savoring the word like a rare delicacy. "Sounds boring." "Don't worry," Vex assured him, her voice laced with confidence and just a hint of recklessness. "I'm sure something will come up. It always does." The not-so-great escape might have been a battered, barely functional hunk of metal, but it was theirs. And as long as they had each other, they could face whatever the future held. For now, though, it was enough to simply be. To celebrate the victories, mourn the losses, and prepare for whatever fresh hell the universe decided to throw their way. Vex raised her glass once more, a final toast to the crew who'd become her family. To whatever comes next, and with that, they drank to the unknown, to the adventures still ahead, and to the simple, undeniable truth that they were still here, against all odds, ready to take on the galaxy one more time.